3 in the morning, and the thermometer in Dubai reads 37 degrees Celsius. That's 98.6 Fahrenheit, which is literally body temperature. The sun set hours ago, but the city just refuses to cool down. Somewhere in a glass tower reflecting the sodium glow of the streetlights, an air conditioner hums at full tilt. It won't stop until dawn. And to be honest, dawn won't help at all. You've probably seen the headlines. Dubai hits 60°C. They scream it across your feed every summer now, usually paired with a photo of a shimmering skyline and pavement that looks like it's about to catch fire. But here is the first thing we need to clear up, because the actual truth makes this story stranger and darker than the clickbait. The air in Dubai has never actually hit 60 degrees. Not once. Not ever. But what that air feels like on your skin, that number is real. And it's actually worse than 60. Let me back up a bit. To understand what's happening to Dubai right now, this week you have to understand what the city was trying to do in the first place. Dubai made a bet. A $1 trillion bet that human engineering could simply override nature. They thought if you poured enough concrete, boiled enough seawater, and pumped enough refrigerated air into the desert, you could make the impossible livable. For a while, that bet looked like genius. Now, in July of 2026, the desert is calling it in. Let's look at the actual record. The highest official air temperature ever logged in the United Arab Emirates was 52.1 degrees Celsius, or 125. 78 Fahrenheit. That was set back in July 2002, measured by the National Center of Meteorology. That is brutal. It's the kind of heat that warps runways and shuts down construction sites, but it's still not 60. So where does 60 come from? It comes from the heat index, what we call the feels like temperature. On July 17th, 2024, that feels like number in Dubai clawed its way up to an estimated 62 degrees Celsius. That's 143.6 Fahrenheit. The difference between the 52 the thermometer reads and the 62 your body feels comes down to one invisible ingredient: water. The humidity hanging off the Persian Gulf gets so thick it literally stops your sweat from working. And that humidity is the thing that could actually kill you. Stay with me here, because this is the part nobody puts in the headline. There is a measurement called the wet bulb temperature. Think of it as the temperature a thermometer reads when you wrap its bulb in a wet cloth and the water evaporates off it, which is exactly what your body does when you sweat. As long as sweat can evaporate off your skin, you can survive absurd heat. But there is a hard, physical, non-negotiable ceiling, and that ceiling is 35 degrees Celsius on the wet bulb scale, or 95 Fahrenheit. If you cross that line, the air is so saturated with moisture that your sweat simply stops evaporating. It just sits on your skin, meaning your body's only cooling system fails completely. It doesn't matter how young you are, how fit you are, how much water you drink, or whether you're standing in the shade. A perfectly healthy human being will die within hours because your core temperature climbs, and you basically cook from the inside out. Now here is why that should terrify anyone watching this. The Persian Gulf, that warm, shallow, salty body of water that Dubai sits right on top of, is one of the only regions on the entire planet where climate models project wet bulb temperatures will regularly breach that fatal 35-degree line. They are projecting this by 2070 if emissions keep climbing the way they are. That isn't a distant sci-fi apocalypse. That's within the lifetime of kids born this year. So the 60°C headline is a mirage, but it's a mirage pointing straight at something real and much more frightening. Let's talk about right now. As I record this, the Way is being roasted alive by an intense summer heat wave. Just yesterday, on July 19th, 2026, the town of Madinat Zayed out in the Al Dhafra region hit 48.2 degrees Celsius, which is 118.7 Fahrenheit. The forecast for this whole week, the week of July 20th, calls for inland highs pushing 49 degrees. That's 120 Fahrenheit and change. There's even a name for this stretch of the calendar. The locals call it Jamrat al-Kaith, the season that started roughly on July 3rd, understood for generations as the 40 hottest days of the year. It comes with a dry, scorching wind called al-Saymum that blows off the interior deserts like a hairdryer aimed right at your face. This isn't new to the people who live here, but what is new is how far it's tilting past what anyone remembers. The numbers back that up in a way that's hard to argue. In 2026, Dubai's climate change severity score was rated very high at 62 out of 100, according to a 17-year analysis by AQI.in. And here's the kicker. They clocked a 38.7% worsening in climate volatility compared to the 16-year average. Humidity is up 11.6%, and rainfall has gone totally erratic. The trend line isn't just going up, it's steepening. Now, you might be thinking that it's the desert, so of course it's hot, and wondering what the actual crisis is. The crisis is that Dubai wasn't built to lose. Dubai was built to be the proof that humans could beat the environment with money and ambition, and the way it fought the desert is exactly what's now turning against. Consider how this city even exists. 99% of Dubai's drinking water doesn't come from any river or aquifer. It comes from the sea through desalination, which means enormous industrial plants take in seawater from the Gulf, boil it or force it through membranes, and separate out the salt to make fresh water. It's brilliant, but it's also a trap. Because after you pull the fresh water out, you're left with a superheated, super salty sludge called brine. And that brine gets pumped right back into the Persian Gulf. Follow that loop with me, because it's the dark heart of this whole story. Hot brine goes back into the Gulf, which warms the water. Warmer water evaporates faster, pumping more moisture into the air. More moisture means higher humidity, and higher humidity spikes that deadly wet bulb temperature we just talked about. And what do you do when the heat gets more dangerous? You crank the air conditioning harder. Air conditioning in the UAE devours up to 70% of the country's peak summer electricity, and most of it is burned from fossil fuels. That pumps out more carbon, which warms the planet, which warms the Gulf, which raises the humidity all over again. It's a snake eating its own tail. The city's survival machine is manufacturing the exact conditions that could one day make it unsurvivable. Researchers have a chillingly perfect name for one piece of this. They call it the thermal illusion. It's the illusion that you can air condition your way out of a warming climate when the air conditioning itself is quietly making it worse. And then there's the architecture itself. Those iconic towers, mirrored glass stacked 100 stories high, catching the sunset and throwing it back like a wall of fire, look like the future. But they are a disaster for a desert. Glass is basically a greenhouse standing on end. Sunlight pours in, heat gets trapped, and you have to spend staggering amounts of energy just to keep the inside cool enough for a human to sit at a desk. Worse, those mirrored surfaces bounce concentrated solar radiation straight back down onto the sidewalks, cooking the pavement below to temperatures that can blister skin. Multiply that by an entire skyline, by miles of asphalt roads and concrete plazas. What you build is an urban heat island, but I think of it as a heat battery. All day long, that glass, steel, and blacktop soaks up the sun's energy and stores it. Then, when night falls and the desert should be cooling off fast, the city slowly bleeds all that stored heat back out. That's why you get that horror I opened with. 3 a.m., 37 degrees, with the whole metropolis eating, radiating warmth like a stove that was left on. Durham University researchers have documented exactly this effect. Think about what that does to a human body over weeks. Your body needs the night to recover from the heat of the day, those cool overnight hours to reset. When 3 a.m. is still 37 degrees, that recovery never comes. You're being slow cooked around the clock, day after day, for the entire length of Jamrat al-Kaith and beyond. The city took the relief valve away. Here's the twist most people never see coming. The most dangerous stretch of Dubai's summer isn't the peak of July, when the thermometer is highest. It's late summer, around August and September, which runs against everything your instincts tell you. Ibrahim Al-Jarwan knows this rhythm better than almost anyone. He's the chairman of the board of the Emirates Astronomy Society, the local authority UAE media turn to for tracking the Gulf's seasonal shifts. He explains that after around August 11th, the air temperature actually starts to dip a little, but the humidity climbs hard, especially along the coast. He noted that while temperatures remain high, humidity increases significantly, particularly in coastal areas, and the combination of heat and moisture also helps trigger convective cloud formation. Think about that. As the raw temperature falls, the danger rises because it's the moisture that kills, not the digits on the thermometer. A 43-degree day soaked in Gulf humidity can be deadlier than a 49-degree day of bone-dry desert air. Most deserts on Earth give you dry heat, which is punishing but survivable because your sweat can still do its job. Dubai's coastal position robs you of even that mercy in the late season. This year, summer doesn't officially end until September 23rd based on the astronomical marker, but the experts are blunt about it. The humidity will keep the feels like temperatures brutal deep into October. The calendar says autumn, but the Gulf says otherwise. Now let me tell you about the day the desert city drowned, because this is where the story takes a turn nobody scripted. On April 16th, 2024, Dubai was a city engineered head to toe to fight the sun. Every dollar of its climate defense was aimed upward at the heat. On that day, the sky opened up and did something Dubai's records hadn't seen in 75 years. More than 250 millimeters of rain fell in under 24 hours. That is more than an entire normal year's worth of rain in a single day. The concrete that traps all that heat also traps water. Dubai has almost no natural drainage, and why would it in a place where it barely rains? So the water had nowhere to go. Highways turned into rivers, the metro flooded, and 41 flights were diverted. Malls turned into wading pools. Luxury cars floated down streets like abandoned toys, and 4 people died in the UAE that day. The city that spent decades armoring itself against fire was brought to its knees by water. Immediately, the rumors started about cloud seeding. People insisted the UAE had made it rain on purpose, that they'd fired chemicals into the clouds and gotten more than they bargained for. It's a tidy story, but it's also wrong. Dr. Diana Francis, an assistant professor and the head of the Environmental and Geophysical Sciences Lab at Khalifa University in Abu Dhabi, is a leading atmospheric scientist. Her post-mortem of the 2024 floods was clear. This wasn't cloud seeding. This was a massive synoptic weather system, a genuine atmospheric monster, supercharged by abnormally warm sea surface temperatures. Those warm seas are linked directly to climate change. The same overheated Gulf that's driving the deadly humidity is also loading the atmosphere with the moisture that comes crashing down in catastrophic floods. Her warning cut to the bone. She stated that several previous scientific studies have come to the same conclusion, which is that extreme rainfall events, especially during spring, are becoming more frequent and more intense. And this tendency is set to continue in the coming decades. The World Weather Attribution scientists reached the same verdict, pinning the disaster on human-caused climate change, not local weather manipulation. So look at the full picture. Dubai built a fortress against the heat, and the same warming that fuels that heat also handed the sky enough water to paralyze the fortress overnight. Fire and flood are both feeding off the same source. The city can't win a war where the enemy attacks from 2 directions at once using the exact same weapon. There's a quieter tragedy unfolding off the coast too, and it might be the most poetic warning of all. Remember the world? That artificial archipelago of islands dredged up from the seabed and shaped like a map of the entire globe was sold as the ultimate flex of human control over nature. You could buy France or own Australia, man-made continents floating off the Dubai coast. Reports say those islands are slowly eroding, sinking back into the Persian Gulf. They are victims of rising seas and shifting sands, with the water quietly reclaiming what the dredgers stole from it. There's no headline explosion or dramatic collapse, just sand giving way to sea, one tide at a time. It is a scale model of the whole planet dissolving. If you wanted a symbol for what happens when you try to out-engineer the ocean, you couldn't invent a better one. Dubai isn't blind to any of this, and that's the part I respect. In response to rising sea levels and coastal erosion eating at its shoreline, the Dubai Electricity and Water Authority and the Dubai Environment and Climate Change Authority have turned to trees. Mangroves, to be specific. Through late 2025 and into 2026, they've planted more than 950 mangrove trees at the Jebel Ali Marine Sanctuary. Mangroves are natural coastal armor because their roots grip the sediment, blunt the waves, and drink down carbon. It's a genuinely smart move, using nature to fight back the sea instead of concrete. But here's the uncomfortable question that hangs over the whole enterprise. Nearly 14,000 mangroves against a warming Gulf, rising water, and a heat feedback loop powered by 70% of the nation's summer electricity? Is that a defense? Or is it just a gesture? A city that boils an entire sea for its drinking water is now planting seedlings to hold back that same sea. You tell me which force is bigger. Let's zoom out for a second, because Dubai is not an isolated freak show. It's the extreme, glittering front edge of something happening everywhere. All over the world right now, the systems we built a century ago to control nature are failing in real time. Reservoirs that anchored entire American towns are turning to cracked mud. Places like Medina Lake in the Texas Hill Country have dropped to just 4% full, leaving its docks stranded dozens of feet above dried creek beds. Elephant Butte in New Mexico, once the largest man-made lake on Earth, is evaporating down toward 2% of capacity. Coastlines are caving into the ocean, and homes on North Carolina's Outer Banks are toppling into the Atlantic one after another. These are different disasters, but the same lesson is repeating on a loop. We built for a climate that no longer exists. Dubai just happens to be the boldest version of that mistake. The purest test case. No city on Earth bet more chips on the idea that engineering beats environment. No city imported more sand, boiled more sea, or refrigerated more open air. And so no city has more riding on the answer to the one question this whole story keeps circling back to. Can humanity out-engineer a changing climate? Or is Dubai proof that given enough time, nature always collects? I want to be fair here. Dubai is not going to vanish tomorrow. There will be more record-breaking towers, more desalination plants, and more air conditioning humming through the night. The city has money, ambition, and absolutely no intention of surrendering. What's changing is the math. Every year the Gulf gets a little warmer, and every year the humidity climbs, up 11.6% already. Every year the wet bulb line inches closer to that fatal 35. Every year the summers stretch longer, just like how May of 2025 Shattered records 2 days running when Swaihan, out near Al Ain, hit 51.6 degrees Celsius in a month that has no business being that hot. The temperature that once shocked people in 2002 is becoming a routine forecast. The floods that hadn't happened in 75 years are now something scientists expect to see again, and worse. The islands shaped like the world are slipping under, and the defense against all of it burns fossil fuels that warm the very sea, driving the crisis. So the next time your feed throws you that headline, Dubai hits 60°C, remember, it's a lie that's telling the truth. The air never touched 60, but the thing your body would feel, that moisture-choked, sweat-killing, wet bulb reality creeping up on the Persian Gulf, is a slower and far more patient threat than any number on a thermometer. Dubai set out to build a city that defied nature. It succeeded, for one brilliant, gleaming moment in human history. And now, at 3 a.m., in 37-degree heat, with the air conditioners roaring and the Gulf steaming, and the sand quietly swallowing the islands offshore, nature is sending back its reply. It's not shouting. It doesn't need to. It just has to wait.